So I got into a heated debate with an older gentleman today, talking about provider men, what men should provide in a relationship for a significant other, this, that, and the third. He's 60 years old, right? Him and his wife have been married for numerous amount of years. And he explained to me, yeah, man, my wife has never had to touch a bill, this, that, and the third. And I was like, I get it, OG. I get it. But do you know what economy we're in right now? And he said, yeah, y'all young folks just ain't trying to make enough money. I'm like, okay, well, how much money do you think these young folks need to make to provide for two people off of one income? He said, six figures, $100,000.
All right. So let me add a little bit more perspective because he said that the guy was over 60. I'm 43. I'm assuming that this guy is about 30 years old or so, maybe 28. Who knows? Maybe 30 ish. I don't know. But you can see the levels, right? Like above 60, 43, 30. That's across the board. So now maybe I can add a little bit of context so I can bridge the gap between the two. And my goal is to add solutions, not only just criticize or identify where the problem areas are, but also figure out how it is that I can bridge the gap to help people to understand the difference between this and that, and then how you can actually become successful when it comes to relationships and being a provider. Number one, we have to first start off with the idea that every woman should not be provided for, right? Because you have to be able to identify the difference between a hoe and a housewife. Only wives should be the ones that are provided for. Let me say that again for the people in the back because everybody think that they're in a situationship or a relationship and you got a lot of women that's begging out here. Only wives should be provided for. That's number one. Number two, wives with children that are stay at home, meaning that women should be purposeful. Women was purposeful in his time. Women are purposeful in my time, and women should be purposeful that come after me. So first of all, if you don't have children, that don't mean that you can sit at home and drink wine every day. That don't mean that you should be able to stay home and just chill. All right. So when my wife and I've been married for 21 years, I got married when I was 22 years old, right? Got married in 2004, had my daughter in 2008 at the height of the recession. The agreement was I didn't want a daycare or latchkey or anybody providing for or putting their values into my child. And so when when we decided to have a child after we got married with no children out of wedlock, no step baby daddies, no step mamas, that she would become a full-time mother. Ironically enough, just so happened that the recession hit, I lost my job, and we basically had to move back into my mother's basement. We had to practice group economics. So, with that being said, though, here's the thing: she worked and added value all the way up until, and it wasn't hard or anything like that, but she worked and she added value all the way up until the time that she was basically ready to burst. And then since then, she hasn't had a regular full time or part time job since then. And that's largely because, um, once my daughter became of age to where she was going to school full time, then that's when she had to decide or figure out what it is that she wanted to do. But by that time, I was back working full time. Obviously, I was way into the throes of hustling and success and grinding and hustling. But here's the real caveat to that, because the divide is that it was so much cheaper for you to be able to provide for a woman back then, or provide for your family, or be able to have housing, and the rent is out of control and all of that. And it's not true. It's not true. All right. Here's the truth: interest rates were way higher back in his time than there is now. They did not make as much money back in his time as they did now. And here's the kicker. And this is the part where people don't get it. They don't understand. They are divided. They wasn't outside at that particular time. Nobody had to have Balenci's, Jordans. You didn't have to live in the suburbs with 3 or 4 bedrooms. You didn't have to meet the expectation of your income, right? People bought homes in the hood. Things that we despise. The reason why we let our grandmother's house go and we let our grandfather's house go. And when they gave it to us, everybody fought over and they got rid of it, or they just let it get abandoned and somebody else went in and bought it and gentrified it and made it nice again. People don't want to minimize the amount that they are paying And what they had to do in order to survive was based off of what their lifestyle is. You didn't have all of these subscriptions. Nobody had a computer. If you had a computer, you was the top of the top, right? You didn't have 1,000 smartphones. You didn't have to have granite marble countertops and all of that stuff. Again, people practiced group economics. It was not crazy or looked down upon. You didn't have a crazy amount of student loan because most people didn't necessarily go to college right off the bat. And that's why you had so many people that say, yo, I'm the first person to go to college out of my family. So when you start to put into place our the things that are eating at our paychecks, the DoorDashes, the Grubhubs, the Uber Eats, the Turks and Caicos, the Carnival Cruises, and all of that stuff. People were okay going to work, coming home, playing basketball, chilling, hanging out with family, barbecuing, you know what I'm saying? Watching regular TV. It was a luxury to have cable. I don't really think y'all really catching it. The cost of living was lower because the lifestyle was different. And people were okay with living in a hood because it wasn't considered a hood. It was just considered that's where you lived and that's where the place that you was. And it wasn't tripping about all of this on Instagram and trying to keep up with the Joneses and being fresh and all of that stuff. So if you really want to put it in context, there are pros then, and there are pros now. There are cons then, there are cons now. But most people, they can't fully take into consideration that, fam, we have more opportunity than ever before. They worked 2, 3 full-time jobs back then. Not 2, 3 full-time jobs, but they worked 2 full-time jobs back then. You know what I'm saying? So they had layoffs back then. Inflation was crazy in the 80s. Absolutely insane. They had the dot-com bubble burst in 2000. They had 87, 84, all of these things, right? So I am in a sweet space where I'm able to really pay attention to what happened in the past, and sometimes I've actually lived through it versus what it is that I see now. And even me today, and I'm gonna play the rest of this video, and I always like to give credit to the content creator, regardless of whether I agree or not. Even me today, I still live off of a fraction of what my income is. I don't need a big mansion or a big house until I get to the space where I believe that it is completely luxurious to do so and it doesn't affect me whatsoever, is what my point is. Everybody gotta had his big house. Everybody gotta have a car note. They didn't have car notes back then. Right? You went and you bought your car, and it didn't even have to be new. You can buy a car used, and you ride that joint until now. They marketed us 30-year mortgages. They marketed us car notes. They marketed us all of these high insurance rates. People caught public transportation. They live, work, and play all in the same area. They bought what they needed for the day, and that was it. And so the cost of living is crazy. And I know that there's going to be people inside of the comments that all say, "Oh, Anton, no, that's not true. It's not the same. Look at the calculations." I'm telling you that if you really start to understand the context, you'll see it a little bit differently.
First of all, only 18% of Americans make $100,000 a year.
And no, you don't have to make 100,000 in order to be able to be a provider person. You just got to get with somebody that's more or less aligned with your lifestyle, and they don't need all of this nonsense that they're looking at on Instagram.
Everybody ain't touching 100,000, right? Let's just break down the necessities though. Let's say you make 100,000, right? Let's start with rent. I'm in here in Washington. Rent for a 2-bedroom, $2,400. Let's multiply that times 12. Get your notepads out, man, and keep follow.
You, I don't know if I could really help y'all to understand this. You don't have to follow along with the crowd and the trends. You don't have to do that. You don't have to go into places where you got to pay $2,400 a month in rent if you can't afford it. You don't have to do that.
$28,800, $2,400 a month for a year. Subtract that by 100,000, you got $71,200. All right. Next, we got two car notes. I'm just assuming average two $400 car notes. That's $800. Multiply that times 12, $9,600. Minus that times 71,000, you got $61,600. Right. Now we got two insurances. Right. I'm assuming they 300 a pop, 600 for both. Times that times 12, we got 7,200. We are now at $54,400, right? Now let's talk about groceries. $300 a month times 12, that's $3,600. Minus that times $54,400, we got $800 left, right? I'm not including if people got kids, dates, any leisure activities, clothes, hygiene, cleaning supplies, gas, car maintenance, savings.
Let me know what y'all think inside of the comments. Make sure y'all tab into the Patreon. Link is in the description. Teach Hanley, 40% off your first order, 20% off for life. I think I'm going to introduce this into both the Millionaire Morning Show and After Hours. I love y'all. I appreciate y'all. I'm going to holler at y'all later. Can't wait to see what y'all say in the comments.